Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, March 31st, 2022. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the podcast this week. I am Norm. So glad to have you here with us. And I am spinning the roulette wheel, or what's the thing you call when there's like a lottery, the tambola, picking out a names. Who's joining me this week? Oh, we have one Joey Fameli. Joey, good to see you.
Hello. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for making yourself available. Joey is, of course, our head of production and been on podcasts recently. We'll say the things might need to know most about Joey. Loves Halo, loves Fast and Furious.
Right.
Loves making movies, loves watching movies. And first time on the show, we have someone new to the Tested family. You may have seen him mentioned in our social media posts and in our behind the scenes videos, but I want to welcome formally, not only to the show, but to Tested, Josh Self. Josh, welcome.
Hello, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, it's super great to be here. I was, Norm, when you asked me to be on the podcast, I was like, what? Okay. Oh, wow. This is real.
Jumping right into the deep end here.
Yeah.
Going into the podcast realm.
It's all right. You've been on a Zoom call. If you've been on a Zoom call, you can do a podcast. There you go.
Yeah.
That's like the bare minimum required. And don't worry about it. It's going to be totally. It's not going to be pulling hair, and we'll make it easy for you since it's your first time on. Of course, we're getting some rotating seats for guests as Jeremy has departed. Kishore has some family matters to take care of for the next couple of weeks. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be seeing members of the Tested family join me on the show, as well as some internet friends, people that we may or may not know in real life, but I thought it'd be a good chance to find those people and geek out with them as we dive back into the world of pop culture, tech, and making. But having both Joey, you, and Josh on the show this week, I thought it'd be fun to talk about movies, things that we're all into, talk about some production, some gear. If I had been a little more prepared, I would have thrown out, maybe I'll do this. I'll throw out, as recording this, some questions out on Twitter and see if folks out on Twitter by the end of the show have questions about production, about the Tested production that we'll answer in real time. I'll throw some out there.
Right.
Start a Twitter
live
thread.
questions. All right.
But maybe some first thing to start is, Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about you as a videographer and editor, the things that you like, and what your experience so far has been shooting with us as you edited one of the big pieces that released this past month, Adam's big dart blaster, his headcanon, as someone named on social media.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of blanking here, but something that I've always been interested in is I've always been passionate about making movies, and it's there's some if you go back my mom has some VHS tapes where
I was going to say, do you get the VHSs as well?
Yeah, totally.
I used to do the same, haunt their VHS recorder and make, toys come to life.
Yeah. And there's my mom is has some VHS tapes where I'm like, hey mom, okay. So I'm trying to make a movie where I'm trying to throw a football to myself. And
in-camera tricks, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and so I'm telling my mom no, you can't cut away that early. I have to see it But yeah,
That's not how you hold a C-stand, Mom.
You got to save those VHS tapes, because when you become a big time director, that's what you're going to bring to your, you know, your documentary series or your
Right.
behind the scenes series. You got to show the journey by bringing up the VHS tapes. These days, the kids have it easy because they're filming with their phones, and everything's, you know, they can throw out their TikToks as the first
Exactly.
filmmaking, you know, forays, you know, but
I
previous
don't know
to
if
that.
if you guys seen M. Night Shyamalan's DVDs, like early, like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, he includes that stuff in his special features, right? Like it's like terrible VHS short film. Like I
Yeah.
remember watching those and be like, well, I can make movies then. Like these are this look too hard.
I think
exactly.
Oscar Isaac was he hosted SNL a couple weeks ago, and he showed in the opening monologue one of the short films, and it's a classic like SoCal short film, him standing in the pool playing all the roles, like, you know, like a 8-year-old kid playing a ninja, you know, a ninja warrior, and exactly right. So we all come from those roots. But Josh, like I said earlier, you shot and edited the big payoff reveal that we had for Adam's big. His dart blaster, head mounted dart blaster.
Right.
Talk about that process a little bit, because
I was
all fun. It was very fun.
Yeah, I mean, I was you know, I had you know, back in December, I had basically done an audition shoot with you guys, and I think that, you know, that went really well. You know, obviously, I got the job. Um, but yeah, and so then we came up on this thing, and like Adam had built this like very wonderful you know, contraption that was like a head mounted dart blaster, and you know, we had the Zoom call, and I was like, hey guys, what if we did like a James Bond kind of thing, you know? And what I was really interested in, you know, because I went to school for cinematography, but I also went to school for 3D animation, and that was where I you know, really kind of like, you know, I didn't you know, go into that field of work, but I did go into animation. And so like this thing about like silhouettes, I guess, is what was like really interesting to me. And so for Adam to, you know, have this like helmet that was like firing these darts, and like I just had this image where it was like, I want to see him like go here and do this.
Right. It's like that Mickey Mouse ears effect that he's got going on there.
Yeah, it is like, yeah, it's the Mickey Mouse thing, but it's also like, I think like for the James Bond, you know, it just like, it works really well to kind of like play off of that, I guess.
Totally.
But yeah, and so I pitched that, and yeah, and I was like, I was blown away that you guys kind of let me do that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, and like Adam was super into it. He was like, oh, I'm going to like bring me in my tux, and we'll, you know, we'll get like the psych. And I was like, oh my God, like these guys, they're going to let me do this. They're actually going to let me do this.
Well, it was a great idea, and you know, to execute it, we didn't have a ton of space. We shot in the tested office. Joey, you filmed a BTS video that you can find on the YouTube channel. But what people see there, and it's really funny for people who watch our videos, it's the first time we kind of pull back and show a big wide angle view of what our office looks like with our high ceilings. But we got this big white backdrop, photography backdrop. How big is that? How big was that roll? And how high did you hang it up?
I don't know who hung it up, but it was about 12. I think it's 12 feet. It's a 12-foot cyc that we rolled down. I think Adam actually just threw on some ropes, put it up in the ceiling. But yeah, it's your typical cyc, which we don't normally shoot, you know, green screen or cycs in the office. So I think that was a lot of fun to sort of have in there and play with for the first time. And then again, Josh, with your idea, I mean, going back to what you were saying about, you know, sure, let's do this. I think that's the benefit of working on YouTube and working in web, right? The stakes are not it's not a network a televised situation where it needs to go through a bureaucratic list of people, right? It's just, hey, here's a good idea. Let's yeah, sure, do it. let's go for it. Have some fun.
Yeah. And having that guiding principle, the reference of something that we were aspiring, gave us the parameters to figure out. We knew that we are going to have that vignetting of the barrel of that classic Bond opening. You wanted the full body. We tried to recreate that as faithfully as possible. And then, Josh, as you were shooting it, you were thinking of all the different styles, because over the history of Bond, and we just saw over this weekend, there was that big 60 years of Bond tribute. Every actor that's played that role and done an opening has done it a little differently. So it was kind of cool for you to dive into picking a style, and Adam doing also in his own way. Like, he did multiple takes to get the turn right and to get the right personality to do it in a very Adam way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, he, when he showed up and he put on the tux and he had the those those Adam shoes,
right?
And,
those Tom Sachs Nikes,
right? Yeah,
the Margiela Nikes. That's right.
It was like, it was so perfect. Yeah.
Well, going back to the silhouette thing, I mean, like what you put your finger on is like there's something comedic in there's something very comedic in the reveal that's in front of your face. Like when you can see it on old cartoons. It's probably not. It's not aged well, but like in cartoons where you see like the folks walking from the side and then they turn, all of a sudden it's a huge, wide, muscular guy, right? It's a very like Looney Tunes-esque sort of
absolutely
reveal that's right in front of your face that you didn't even recognize. And I think those ears are exactly that. And like you're able to kind of pinpoint that with that silhouette idea.
Yeah. You can see in the BTS piece that literally on the monitor that we had, you guys cut out just curved pieces of foam core or something to put on it as a mask, so we can visualize what the silhouette and what the framing was. But even then, there's only so much space. We can only pull back so much. What was that editing like to then take that footage and the different takes and put that together, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually like, it was a lot more work than I assumed that it was going to be. And also, I just got hired by you guys in February, and so this was like kind of this is like a big thing for me. And I wanted to impress the crew, and I wanted to, of course, impress the I guess like the viewers and the membership of Tested. And yeah, so I think like the biggest thing was that like the backdrop, like the cyclorama, if you will, was not big enough. It straight up was not big enough. And it was like, just to give people an idea. So this was like, that backdrop was probably 12 feet wide, and we pulled it down and then like brought it out.
And you got to pull Adam away from it so you don't cast shadows. So it's like, it makes it even smaller.
Yep.
Right.
So it's like, it's pulled like 4 feet up so that like, so Adam can walk on it. And then, Joey, like, we had like, we were having this discussion about like, how far could Adam walk? And, I mean, cause there's like, okay, so there's the backdrop that Adam is behind, but what the camera was shooting is actually wider than that.
Yeah.
So, so we were seeing like, the other like, the rooms of Tested, beyond this backdrop. And yeah, so like when I brought that footage home, and I was trying to, kind of like make it work. I got into Illustrator and I was trying to like make this gun barrel, and then I had to like get into Photoshop, and yeah, basically, it's like you have this sorry, I'm trying to like but you have this like iris that's going around, and it like I had to like create the backdrop that Adam was walking behind. I had to like remake that from scratch, and
like you're basically bouncing through. You're doing the world tour of Adobe apps for this. I'm guessing, right? Like you're going through Illustrator, bringing things into Photoshop, After Effects. Like those are the projects
100%,
that are. I look at the end. I'm like, I don't even know how this workflow works. I'm just going to close this project and be done with it.
Right. I think of like the perfect scenario. If we had like unlimited space time, the way if you want to shoot it all in camera, you're going to be real far back. You use a long lens. You're going to have a massive backdrop that's going to be tens of feet across, where you can get it all in frame. And so whoever the subject walking along, you can just in post just mask it and track it without having to do any adjustments to the frame, because this is very compressed space and the backdrop's only so big. You're animating a cutout of Adam essentially, while then creating a fake background. It's almost like putting him on a virtual people mover as he moves across up to the center of the frame, a little like a treadmill action, to create more of a frame than we actually had.
100%. And it was kind of weird because like I started animating like the gun iris and was pulling down, and then I was like, oh yeah, there's not footage right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's literally like no it just doesn't exist. And so I mean there was stuff that was like had to recreate that stuff. And
I mean it fits with the shirt that you're wearing, which is fix it in pre, right? This is a situation where
there you go.
You're like, oh man, I wish we would have had the means to do this in the the scale that it required.
Yeah. And that's part of the process that doesn't always get appreciated. Even in the BTS piece, you're watching what's going on during the film day, but in post, there are the problems that you encounter that we may not know is a problem or something that needs to get fixed, and that's all in the editing. Editing isn't just chopping up a duration of footage in a clip and piecing it together. It's actually adjusting the image itself, as so many editors do. And that's why those editors are so pissed off that they didn't get appreciated at this past year's Oscars, which was, of course, this past weekend. We're not going to talk about what everyone else is talking about. But one thing I did want to mention, of course, one of the big things was the telecast was adjusted to not put on screen many of the awards that previously were there, including, one of the sound, the score. I think Hans Zimmer, who won, didn't have that actually broadcast. Film editing, achievement in film editing was also not broadcast. But Oscars are a great time. It's a great kind of milestone every year. It's a look back of the year of films. And so both of you guys, big fans of film. What did you guys think of just this past year? Like, we're not talking about who won the awards, but I certainly didn't see Coda, but now I want to. Glad Dune won a bunch of technical awards, but what did you guys think?
Yeah, I realized after going through the Oscar like movies, of trying to recap of like what I saw. I don't know. I wasn't as like. I didn't see Coda. I think After Yang was probably the more recent one I saw. It was like a mix of some quieter movies and some the spectacles like Dune. I don't think there was anything huge off the top of my head that really blew me out of the water. I think there's actually more movies that are coming out in the last couple months that like really have my attention that I want to check out.
It was interesting.
Yeah, I'm just now starting to go to the theater as well. I don't know about you guys.
Oh yeah. The Batman was the last one I saw in theaters, and that was one I wanted to actually make an effort to see.
Mm-hmm.
But we remember, and I want to talk about that too. But I remember, 2020 the first year of the pandemic, a lot of movies just didn't happen, right? Movies were pushed back, production was halted. And so last year's Oscar was really interesting because of the crop of films. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it scraping the bottom of the barrel, but it allowed a lot of different films or indie films.
You're like reaching into the vault of movies that may have not been released or
Exactly. And I feel like this year there's a little bit more of a return to, let's have our feel-good indie film. That's Dakota, The Little Miss Sunshine of the year. Let's do our big genre film, Nightmare Alley. Let's do our auteur film in a Paul Thomas Anderson film. You're getting the mix of what a typical Oscars looks like. At the same time, though, a lot of the more interesting films, like you mentioned, After Yang and all the A24 stuff, seems like the stuff that, at least in the world of streaming, feels way more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Power of the Dog. Like there was movies that came out, through streaming means that I think were more in my wheelhouse than some of the the theatrical releases. And again, I haven't seen a lot of ones that are still in the theater, but and they're even some of the big spectacles. I never saw Eternals. I don't know what it is about those. We saw Zack Snyder's Army of Thieves. Kate was an action one that I really dug, shooting on the Sony Venice.
And some of these were intended for theatrical distribution, and then because people weren't going to theaters because of what the box office looked like, they then went to streaming, which is different than when Netflix says they're going to commission a film and they do. I think Red Notice, for example, was one they bought and paid for from beginning to end as a big budget Netflix film, versus one that originally was going to be in theaters and then they got picked up for streaming distribution rights, which was the case with Mitchell's versus the Machines, the animated film, one of the best ones of last year.
Yeah, Mitchell, I actually really like that one. I haven't seen. I've been trying to get my kid to get into what is it? Panda? Red Panda?
Turning Red.
Turning Red. There's a couple that I'm like, I just want her to watch.
Red Panda, yeah.
Turning Red, and there's another new one that just came out. Anyway, some animated movies. My daughter is still very much into the same 3 movies that she's been watching this the last 3 years. So I'm trying to get her into some of the more, some of the more enjoyable animated movies for us both.
Yeah, Pixar films definitely they fill that role, and this one's really good. Turning Red is fantastic. It's directed by Domi Shi, who is her first theatrical directorial debut, but she did the short film Bow. That was her short film.
Oh, really?
Pixar.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the first 20 minutes of Turning Red, and I was like, this is my jam. This is Edgar Wright. This is
it's Scott Pilgrim.
wild.
It's very much, and not
Scott
just because
Pilgrim,
it's Canadian, but it has that energy. It has a Miyazaki and Edgar Wright mishmash together. And like the last Pixar film, Luca, that came out, very much the director's personal story. And also it's very much they're leaning into different animation styles. There's not a classic Pixar human look that you would associate with maybe not The Incredibles, but I think like Inside Out. That's what I think of the humans there. It's a very human Pixar.
Yeah.
But I think Luca and Turning Red have distinct character design.
I'm trying to watch Luca as well. She sees the fish and she starts getting scared. Turn it off. Let's finish this one.
Hey everyone, before we continue on this week, I want to let you know that This Is Only a Test is made possible this week from the Stack Overflow podcast, which you should check out. Wondering which skills you need to break into the world of technology or level up as a developer? Curious about how the tools and framework you use every day were created? The Stack Overflow podcast is your resource for tough coding questions and your home for candid conversations with guests from leading tech companies about the art and practice of programming. For 13 years, the Stack Overflow podcast has been exploring what it means to be a developer and how the art and practice of software programming is changing our world, as I'm sure it has been changing in their industry as well. The show dives into topics that matter from a listenership of developers, tech enthusiasts, and educators of all stages of their careers at this moment, and provides tangible tools and conversations about the infrastructure in tech right now. With new episodes twice a week, the show dives into topics like Web3, code security, cloud infrastructure, and how AI can solve real-world problems, and more. Listen at stackoverflow.com/podcasts or at any major podcast platform. Now back to the show. But you both mentioned you both watched The Batman. What do you guys think of The Batman from a movie production, from a filming standpoint? Let's not even talk about necessarily story or acting, but from a filmmaking standpoint, what do you guys think?
You saw it, Josh?
I did see it. Yeah.
Why don't you go first?
Sure. Okay. I loved it. I thought it was like actually incredible, and I was like, yeah. I mean, like moments in the theater where I'm sitting there with my wife, and I was in awe. I was like, yeah. Honestly, like, I think it's a great film. I will also, I guess, kind of mention that I like DC. I mean, I guess I have like that favorite. What am I trying to say?
Like the
Your
DC
preference is
cinematic.
DC?
Yeah, like my bias. I have a DC bias. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
All right. That's fair.
So you are restore the Snyderverse kind of guy.
That's a subset. That might be extremist DC.
Yeah, Norm, I agree with you. I think the Snyderverse is like something that I hate. But yeah, I mean, me and my buddies, like back in high school, we used to play Hero Clicks, and I was the DC guy.
The main three, the core three: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, or who are your favorite DC like B heroes or lesser known heroes?
Yeah, I guess like Wonder Woman. I find Superman super not interesting. But yeah, so Wonder Woman, Batman, I would say. Yeah.
You know what I forget? I was rereading I was rereading the one with the dream. Why am I blanking on that name?
Is it a Batman story?
No, Dream.
A Sandman.
See, I was rereading Sandman, and
Sandman, yeah. Uh-huh.
I forgot the little bits of connective tissue to the rest of the DC universe.
Yeah,
like I forgot the Arkham.
I
forgot the reference to Batman. I forgot about all that stuff.
Yeah.
I completely. He was always just in the realm of like Watchmen, kind of a standalone universe.
Yeah, that was Vertigo Comics back in the day. The Sandman, Swamp Thing, they were all DC characters. But
oh man, Neil Gaiman, I love Gaiman's work.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be a TV series. Netflix, they've finished production. Sandman, that's coming out soon, live action. I mean, there's obviously the Audible series, and with all the very much like American Gods with the voice actors that do the full audio telling of Sandman, but the live action series is coming out soon.
After watching Spider-Man No Way Home and seeing all the Doctor Strange stuff, that world stuff going on, I kept thinking back, like, this is the visual language I want Sandman to sort of exist in, this weird, spectacular landscape.
Yeah.
I know you probably haven't seen the trailer for the new Doctor Strange movie coming up, Multiverse of Madness, because you don't watch trailers, Joey, but absolutely it has the kind of architecture in nebulous planes of reality, which is very much a Sandman. Like you have staircases that with no foundation, that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah,
in the vastness of space or
MC Escher universe.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to see what that Sandman production design looks like. But yes, very much looking forward to that. The Batman, though, that was shot by Craig Fraser, who shot
Greg Fraser, yeah,
Dune, as well as Rogue One.
He did Rogue One. He did a bunch of the early volume stuff with Mandalorian. He's kind of been on a hot streak the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah, he's a pretty incredible DP and made some pretty bold choices with Batman. I mean, I don't know if you guys have read much about the lenses that they've used on that. Really wild, broken lenses to capture that movie.
The storytelling in the Batman is like absolutely incredible. It is
like an indie noir.
It's so bold, and it is so like it's insane. It is insane. I'm sorry, I'm getting like my microphone is probably like clipping right now, but like this is like that is cinematography telling a story. It is so good in the Batman.
Yeah, I think Robert Pattinson does a lot with every time he's in frame. Just the Gotham City itself just looks. It looks like it belongs. I don't know if this is the right word. It looks like it belongs there. Whereas, like, I watch Nolan's. I'm like, this is Chicago.
It
Chicago's
feels right.
almost interesting, right?
Yeah. This really is a Gotham that all those people feel like they can easily inhabit, and the way they go about that world feels right.
And their version of Gotham is still a version of New York. They have their equivalent of Times Square. They have equivalent of Madison Square Garden. But the way, wherever they shot it, I'm not sure what city they're in, but however they dressed it up, even their version of Times Square has that old architecture with neons, with big billboards plastered over it, so that mesh of the Gothic that they wanted to show, like a city being rebuilt, which is a big theme in that story. When we talk about how it was shot, though, and those lenses, I think of some of these crowd shots, or the press conferences shots, where it's like it's not like tilt shift, but there's a look to it where it's very the focus is not necessarily on a thin plane, but it's all very center focus.
It's distorted. Yeah, it's both center focus and distorted, and it differed from lens choice from the lens set, right? And so if you had 6 lenses that they were shooting on, every one was busted in just a specific, in a certain way that like either made it the focus plane a little bit more of a shifted, like a tilt shift sort of aspect, or it was very center focus where everything was super, out of focus and blurry on the sides. It was something that caught my eye for the first 30 minutes and I couldn't stop seeing, but after that it just sort of melted in the background and
do you know if they are
gave it a look.
Do you know if they were anamorphics?
That's a good question. I don't think they were, but don't quote me on that. I know they're old Russian lenses that went through iterations. They went through iterations of housings, and so like so they started off as some kind of glass that then went through the housing that was used on film from another company and then rehoused into. Typically, what happens is when like a cinematographer really likes some specific older lens or some lens that's been out of usage for a while, they will have the factory rehouse them in ways that is more suitable.
And Joey, you tested some anamorphics lately when we did the shoot with G4, and you did a video about some of the qualities of anamorphics. Obviously, the kind of oval bokeh is a telltale sign, but something also is just like when you, I'm not sure what focal length it typically is, but when you have a subject, you have the focus kind of has this ring around the subject. It's almost like this curvature, not just in the shape of the bokeh, iris, but like there is some type of bending of the background scene.
Like the distortion. Yeah, really like, and I think that differs based off of how wide your anamorphic. Like those Atlas anamorphics that we used are 2 times anamorphic and had a very wide, very thin field of view, and like you get a lot of that distortion on the end. And so actually, when I did test shots with something like the one of the Panasonics that I was using that uses it was like a 4:3 sensor. It was able to use that entire width, and I was able to really see the distortions happening on the ends. But for the Canon C500 that we shot the short film on, that actually had a little bit of a crop, and so we didn't have that full 2 times. We were cutting that off a little bit, and you can sort of control your distortion and your effects in that way. Yeah, but every anamorphic has its own weird qualities to it, especially the older ones.
And a really cool look for some of the shots in the Batman, because it looked like they had a lot of long shots that were fixed. Very judicious camera placement on a scene with characters walking into focus, very slow pace, just lingering shots. Especially when you think of Batman, how slow he was kind of moving from one position to another of those the crime scene shots, crime scene scenes.
Yeah, crime scene, and then all the fixed cameras. Like I've never seen a car chase or a whole car action scene filmed with such tight lenses that were just like locked onto something, locked onto a car. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and it wasn't the geography, and it wasn't like it wasn't confusing. It wasn't lost. It was just a very stylistic, very exhilarating, in my opinion. And some of those shots, like just seeing seeing the Batmobile thrust out of that fiery like hellscape of destruction made those scenes just feel so intense.
And that was a shot where you had locked on to Colin Farrell, the Penguin's face, where you're looking at him, and then he's looking in the rearview mirror, but you also see essentially what he's seeing with the Batmobile flying out in that fireball. And so you have a lot of these, because it's a chase scene. You have a lot of their intensity on their faces. Very different from like if you think of the Dark Knight chase scene with the Tumbler chasing underneath the Chicago, the Gotham tunnels, and that's very more traditional, like weaving back and forth, almost like a drone shot kind of. You
can tell there was like or I guess they're not called Russian arms anymore, but the Ukraines, the cars with the sort of techno crane sitting on top of them. You can tell it was a lot of chase cars and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you mentioned also the volume, and it sounds like they did use the volume pretty extensively in the Batman as well, for COVID reasons, or for because it made sense, or they wanted to experiment it. But where the bat signal was when Batman would meet Gordon up in that in construction site as a recurring location they had in the movie overlooking Gotham, that was all shot on a soundstage with ILM's volume technology.
Right. Yeah. Again, Greg Fraser knows that place well.
So you can have basically as long as scenes as you want, overlooking a cityscape at sunrise or sunset for however long they needed to shoot.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest benefit of that, right? Is just controlling your golden hour. Keep your golden hours for as long as you want.
Right. Although I think it also means that they have to shoot in a certain way, right? You can't necessarily put the camera outside of a building looking back in, because there is no building, right? And and they do take advantage of the silhouetting there. You see a lot of the Batman silhouettes as they're in that building looking out with, again, Gotham in the background.
Yeah, it shares a lot of the same limitations that like extensive green screen shoots, do, like if you think about Star Wars prequels and stuff, that all had a very specific perspective to it because they're in a big green room, basically.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to rewatch The Batman. It's coming out on, I think, streaming in just a couple of weeks, because it has that 45-day theatrical exclusive window. It's done very well, of course. So I think they're going to make a sequel for sure. And who knows how it's going to mesh with whatever DC has in their post-Zack Snyder DC Extended Universe, because they've reshuffled some of the release dates. Aquaman, The Flash, and the HBO Max series with Batgirl, which is supposed to be in the Zack Snyder universe because it still has J.K. Simmons as Jim Gordon. And then they have, I think, Blue Beetle, I want to say, is another series they have queued up as well. So
go watch Peacemaker.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then Peacemaker as well. That was also
seen Peacemaker. Yeah. Go watch
that technically also is in that Zack Snyder DCEU, but a spinoff of a spinoff.
Blue Beetle. Okay. Well, hey.
One thing is also on HBO Max I wanted to chat with both of you about, if you haven't seen it. There's a new documentary series called One Perfect Shot, and it's created by Ava DuVernay, director, who she was originally going to be, speaking of DC movies, she was going to do the New Gods movie in heavy pre-production for a New Gods movie with Mr. Miracle and the whole Dark Side part of the universe, the cosmic equivalent of what you see in Thanos in the MCU side, basically the Eternals, but the DC version of the Eternals. But they decided not to go forward. But
the lesser Eternals.
Oh, it's all Jack Kirby. It's all part of what Jack Kirby created, right? But what she produced was this, I think, 6-part series. They're half-hour episodes that was inspired and a spinoff of a Twitter account, the One Perfect Shot Twitter account. So if you're unfamiliar,
is that the origin of it?
That is the genesis of it.
Wow.
So there's been a long-running, very popular Twitter account called One Perfect Shot, where I think it started off with these film fans posting just screenshots of their favorite movies, like these classic stills that they love from all genre of film, which is kind of like a little bit of a misnomer because those are not technically shots. right? A shot in
Sure.
a film
Yeah.
is a full sequence, right? These are stills, one perfect still.
One perfect
Right.
frame.
One
yeah.
perfect frame. Exactly. They're frames, not shots. But I think they took the idea and expounded on the idea of a shot, of like a link, whatever it takes to get that shot. And from filmmakers like Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman to John M. Chu for Crazy Rich Asians to even Michael Mann for Heat, they had invited these directors along with some of their collaborators to, one, talk about their journeys in getting to be a filmmaker and their philosophies in making film, but also to re-examine specific sequences, specific shots of their most well-known films. So for Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman, it was the no man's land scene for Wonder Woman. For Crazy Rich Asians, it was the wedding scene. And for Michael Mann for Heat, it was the iconic shootout between Pacino and De Niro in the bank heist scene. I asked if you guys could watch the Michael Mann episode. Did you guys get a chance to watch that?
I did. That's the only one I watched.
Yes.
So I don't have any context of the others.
Well, what did you think about the format? Because it was an interesting way for a director not only to do a little bit of retrospective on their filmography, but then also use some type of green screen, augmented reality recreation to break down a shot.
Yeah. So I guess in the format, I don't know if this is for the rest, but the format, at least for this Michael Mann, was about 45 minutes. So it's pretty breezy. Considering what they're doing. They basically have the first third dedicated to, like, it's almost I want to say masterclass, because they very much they even have the person say, "I'm Michael Mann and this is my one perfect shot," which is, if you ever watch any masterclasses, it's, "I'm Helen Mirren and welcome to my masterclass." Yeah, so they have them sort of talk about the process of getting into the movie, making the movie, what it was like, some of the just kind of overall aspects of their involvement in bringing it to life. And then they go into, like, the second part, which is, like you said, they bring a couple collaborators. In this case, it was his editor and his cinematographer to do a little roundtable just discussion. And then they go into what I would call is like it's a little bit of augmented reality. Michael Mann at least does not engage with the world at all. It's very much, he is just placed into like an Unreal Engine style representation. It felt pre-production. I don't know if you've seen, like,
previs,
people like Matt Workman are developing these Unreal tools that allow you to sort of set a scene up like that using very generic models, just all the stock stuff that Unreal offers. And then you can take a digital camera and sort of figure out your storyboards and stuff. That's sort of what it felt like. It felt like they placed everybody there in, Val Kilmer, Robert De Niro lookalikes. And then Michael Mann sort of just walked around for a minute talking. It wasn't really grabbing things or wasn't engaging with that. It was very much sort of a green screen. It was all sort of interesting. I don't know about you guys, but some of the way they shot it was almost a little bit distracting. Like, I would say the first part of it, where it's like a 3 camera Michael Mann sitting down, is like masterclass, as if, but also they wanted to be MTV in the 90s. Like, the second and third cameras were all over the place, right? Crashing in, doing weird
cliff notes, masterclass.
It wasn't like as interesting as I wanted it to be. I mean, there was what you're saying is like, I mean, it's super interesting to have, like, Michael Mann in a room,
right,
with his editor and his cinematographer, and that's not conversations that a lot of us are privy to.
Sure.
And so that was, like, super interesting to me.
They're almost a little bit limited, though, because they're talking about one perfect shot. So it's like, I can't remember the editor's name, forgive me, but he's like, editor, like, how was it editing that one sequence? And he's like, well, you gave me the thumbs up and I felt great. Like, all right, well,
he's also shallow, like, he's like sucking up a little bit, and like, but also, I mean, it's like, of course, like, I mean, this guy is like, he's doing his dream job, basically. And so, it's like, it's kind of funny in that way, but I mean, it's like,
I wanted the 2-hour version of this. I think if you're going to get all these very accomplished filmmakers, and not just the directors, but production designers and costume designers and editors and cinematographers. I mean, the cinematographer there is, is famous Italian cinematographer.
Yep.
Yeah, and you almost feel like there is a hour-long conversation that they had, but for the show they gave us 5-10 minutes of it at most, because so much of it was shooing in this idea of the quote-unquote one perfect shot. And then once they have to reserve the second half of this episode to this augmented reality, green screen, Unreal Engine, previs breakdown, which, because it's faked, because Michael Mann isn't actually seeing what we're seeing, it's very scripted. He's just kind of very broad strokes describing, it's kind of these general, the thesis of the scene. Vanity Fair has a web series called Notes on a Scene, which I think is very similar vein, but much more thorough breakdowns. And these were new movie releases and some older ones, but you have directors on basically watching their movie on a big tablet or some type of table, and they're using a marker to draw on the scene, circling things. And so while it's not as immersive as recreating a scene and trying to get up to which very like video game pans and zooms. Right. The Notes on a Scene series is I think way more. You get way more cool anecdotes because then the director will pause and circle this thing and point out things that they were remembering from filming that day.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more like a visual director's commentary, the Vanity Fair bit.
Yeah.
And I was going to recommend that. I was going to recommend the Hollywood Reporter YouTube channel does a roundtable with cinematographers, and they get sort of in the weeds, especially when you have cinematographers talking to each other. They have questions and they really go in a deep dive in that stuff. But also with Vanity Fair and Hollywood Reporter YouTube channel, you kind of have to sift through a lot of you have to find those video series. There's a lot of just like 1 minute, what was he wearing on the red carpet videos. But if you can find those ones, those are great. I think Robert Rodriguez, this is I think long done, but he did a series called The Director's Chair. I don't know if you guys have seen that. If you want to watch a director talk to a director and get very deep into the weeds about specific filmmaking stuff, check that out. He's got some great folks on there. John Carpenter with Quentin Tarantino, of course, and goes into like their whole catalog for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and maybe it's a matter of HBO, however they're producing this, thinking of who the audience is. I think with web and YouTube and streaming, they can get away with going deeper or not having set lengths. But this one feels very much like, here's our half-hour produced show that could also work if it was broadcast on ABC or something, or on TV. Right. But it's an interesting concept. The recreations of the scene, especially something that was shot in the 90s, was neat. But I think I want the extended version of that show. And it's good for that Twitter account, which I think is it Film School Rejects that runs it. There's a big movie site that runs the One Perfect Shot Twitter account. Hopefully going to get to do more of that, because there are definitely a lot of great shots.
Did you watch any of the others, or just the Michael Mann?
I watched the Crazy Rich Asians one, and that one's great because a lot of personal story of John M. Chu's journey through USC, being discovered by Spielberg, and kind of very, very personal story that he tells about how he got to the making of this film. No mention, Joey, of the Virgin America safety video, which I would say is a high mark on the career of John M. Chu.
Oh, yeah.
But it's pretty insightful. He does the thing where he literally walks onto the recreation of the wedding scene. He does like, oh, it's like you're here. You can see the glass. And you can
he plays
smell
it up.
the flowers. He really bends down, gets down, and touches the water. So that, I didn't need that. It plays out just a little bit too much. Well, I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but one thing I did want to wrap up with is, sorry, Josh, we're going MCU, as is tradition on this show. Whenever there's a new MCU show, we want to talk about the first episode. This is Moon Knight, of course, which premiered this week. It's Oscar Isaac in a 6-part limited series.
What is a Moon Knight?
What is a Moon Knight? Well, kind of like a Batman, but crazier. Right. And he wears white instead of black.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So Moon Knight is the first of the Disney Plus MCU shows that's introducing a wholly new character as the premise, where previously you had WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, Captain America, Winter Soldier, extending the stories of characters we've seen on the big screen before. Here, it's complete introduction. It's the first of a series with Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk coming out. That will be new characters that we might see on the big screen at some point. But what did you think, Joey? Having seen the first episode.
Well, for context, I read a lot of the team-based Marvel stuff growing up, like X-Men. Well, Spider-Man would be the exception. I never read any Moon Knight. I would only see Moon Knight when he would show up in other people's comics. I'm like, oh, there's that one guy. Oh yeah, I forgot about him. So I didn't know anything about him.
But with an Egyptian god, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. So now, the Egyptian angle is this all? I didn't see the Eternals. Does any of this have to do with Eternals? Or am I missing nothing? Okay.
No, there's nothing. And that's probably the most notable thing. One of the most notable things about this is how disconnected from the MCU it feels, at least in this first episode.
It does not feel like it's part of that world at all. And
there were like literally opportunities in this pilot episode where they could have made some reference to a Thanos or a thing.
Right.
And in fact, yeah, right. And which they do in every other recent Phase 4 thing, but they don't. And maybe there's a reveal later on for like when this happens, because it's not very clear if it's, in the MCU timeline, it's supposed to be, I think, 2024 or something, post snap. But maybe there might be a connection. I'm happy that there's no connection, because so far it stands on its own as this like supernatural horror thriller.
Right. There's something. The first movie I thought of watching it was Venom. There's a very Venom, this deep voiced.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what his issue is. I don't know if that's a comic book thing of it running it. It's very much a Bruce Banner Hulk, Venom, Tom, not Tom Hardy, but Eddie Brock, and sort of, but without the, I guess, awareness or permission for that takeover. But it's definitely got my interest. Like I like the mystery of not knowing much about it. I like how it's done. I was a little bit sort of confused or maybe frustrated in that we would not see any of the action for the first hour. Or like first 45 minutes, it would cut away, or not cut away. But
that's how they would save money a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
So the character, what is it? His name is Steven.
He has with the V. Yeah.
Yes. And he's British, but he's one of the personalities. So Moon Knight has dissociative identity disorder in the comics. So multiple personalities that occupy him. One is Mark Spector, who is in the comics the primary character in the 90s, but the more recent runs, you also have, there are actually many of them, and they seem like they're focusing on those two, Steven and Mark Spector.
Oh, so he has many in the comics.
Yes. Yes. And the supernatural aspect, the Egyptian god aspect, they kind of lean more into recently. In the past, the 90s, Moon Knight was very much a Batman, he was a rich billionaire who became a superhero and flies a white moon-shaped, crescent-shaped plane. But he's here. I like that he has the blackouts, the fugue states, because it allows these interesting kind of smash cuts and allows them to cleverly edit, and maybe they'll revisit those scenes. They can maybe in the storytelling, what unreliable narrator style, reveal new things.
Yeah. I guess I guess I wanted maybe I'm asking a lot from our first episode, but I wanted a little bit more interesting use case of that, right? I think there's a direction you can go with taking somebody out of a situation and bringing them back in, and have that be like confusing or have us wonder what happened as well. But this was just used simply for action scenes in this case, at least for the first episode.
Yeah. And it does end with you seeing the costume. It's not going to make you wait 3 episodes to see action. At the end, it does pay off with seeing the Moon Knight. And 6 episodes will go by quickly. It's unlike HBO Peacemaker, where they drop 3 episodes at once. I kind of wish they did like 1 or 2 episodes to kick it off, to give you more of the story. But at the end, it being a limited series, it feels like it's a movie stretched out to 6 hours. I prefer that than the 10-hour 12 episodes slogs that some of the old other Marvel shows felt like.
Yeah, I gotta say, Oscar Isaac in the first 45 minutes, just I've never seen him do that role.
Yeah, it's great.
Do that.
It's great. So squirrely British,
and then right when you see sort of the other personality, there you are, Oscar Isaac. That's the one I know.
Yeah. We'll revisit talking about Moon Knight hopefully after the series ends. But we got to wrap up. I got to let you guys go. Thank you, Joey, for jumping on the podcast this week. We didn't get to Q&A, but I did poll people, and we might do some. We'll have you back in to do some Q&A about video production in another episode. And Josh, welcome again. Welcome to the podcast. Great job with that video edit, and we'll get you watching MCU at some point. We'll chat about it at the office next time you're in.
We will. Yeah. I'm down. I'm super down. Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow Joey and Josh on social media. I'll have links to them in the description of the YouTube video. But until next time, we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi there. I didn't see you.
Test it.
My hot dog sucks. It still thinks it's a hot air balloon. I mean, I got ketchup on it. Jeremy's laughing at my hot dog. There's a hot. It's not the first choice. No, I have literally four real dogs before my hot dog is a choice. And the hot dog is actually, of all the things that could be hot dogs, that's like more of a hot dog roll.
Dude, that's not fair. That is a good drawing. Don't be hard on yourself. That's actually a really good hot dog.
That's
better than Kishore's.
Yeah, my hot dog was terrible.
Hot dog, not hot dog, clearly hot dog right there, guys. And yet, it thinks it's a hot air balloon.
Test it.